good to see, or talk, I should say, to see everyone and talk to everyone today. I appreciate everyone who has volunteered to be a part of our Road to Recovery work that we're doing here in the district. So I want to first take a few minutes to just thank all of you. I know these types of committees and this type of work requires you to be obviously taking time away from other things that you have to do. And it means a great deal to the district, to our Board of Education, that you've taken the time to be here today. So I just want to start off by saying thank you. It really, it means a lot to us to have our parents, our staff, our community a part of this important conversation, because this pandemic has been, I know, challenging for everyone. And I think we're finally at a point, even though those cases are continuing to rise, where we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. The vaccines are, being administered, and we're starting to see, hopefully, some hope on the horizon. So with that being said, I want to say hello. My name is Carrie Wozniak, and I am the superintendent for Fraser Public Schools. I also have with me today a couple of other people. I have Dr. Anderson, our assistant superintendent. She is on the call as well, along with Kristen Ledford, who is our community relations director. So the three of us will be facilitating tonight's webinar. I promise this is only going to be a half an hour with time for questions at the end. So again, we have a overview of what we want to share with the group tonight, and I'm just going to take a minute to run through that agenda with all of you. So let me get started with my present mode here. Excellent. All right. So again, I want to welcome everyone and say thank you. We're going to take a little bit of time tonight just to talk about the process of the stakeholder committee work, and talk about next steps and what you can expect. We had almost 100 people volunteer between the community and staff to be a part of these three work groups. So we're really excited about that. And I think we're even more excited to do some of the things hopefully next fall that you're seeing here on the right. This was our opening day a couple years ago, where, it was just so wonderful to have everyone back in that auditorium, and the performing arts, the band, our student leaders, sharing with our teachers and our educators, and we want to get back to that. We know how important that is for everyone. So I am looking forward to that. And I wanted to just start off with, we've always been very proactive here in Fraser rather than reactive. We work really hard to plan and prepare for the future. And we know that as we start to think about next school year, the summer, and even end of the year school activities, we need to be thinking about that right now rather than be reactive and, trying to build a plan as things are happening. So a lot of the work that these committees are going to be doing will be thinking about how we're going to be handling the next 12 to 18 months. So that's really important to remember. The other piece I wanted to reflect back on is we have a very strong strategic plan here in Fraser, and that always guides the work that we do. So when we're talking today about these three committees, it's important that we remember our students are at the focus of everything we do, in that portrait of the graduate. So we go back to the idea that we're designing learning for all students, all of our stakeholders, and we always focus in on these four areas of our teaching practices, our learning partnerships, the learning environment, and then again, our digital ecosystem, which has always been a strength of our district. So I always like to reground our thinking in this conversation with our strategic plan. So if you remember, we kind of updated our website, and we talked about Fraser Forward, and we've been talking a lot about that since December. And I'm just going to take a moment and go back to the work we did when we returned to school this fall. And if you take a look at our work that we did in the fall and the summer before we came back, those 5 committees that we put together that I know many of our teachers were on were crucial to us being able to come back to school and do that safely. Remember, we started with our small group cohorts at the elementary and at the middle school. We then scaled up. We started with half days at the middle and the high school, and now we are fully face-to-face K-12, and we have a fully virtual option for all of our students. And that required a tremendous amount of planning and programming details that the staff, the administrators, and the team really worked through together. So that return to school committee was very crucial. We're now at another point where we need to start thinking about coming out of this pandemic and start to think about what they're calling our roadmap to recovery. And that's what these stakeholder groups are really looking to try to do right now. So when I talk about Fraser Forward 2021, we're really talking about how are we going to come back from this pandemic, and what have we learned from 2020 and this pandemic to build upon, and what are some of the things that we can, utilize to help even make us better? Because even in some of these really challenging times, we did learn some things. We learned a lot of things about teaching virtually and a virtual school. And we know that some families in the fall are still going to want that virtual option for their students. So we need to be really mindful about our community needs and start to think about what are those questions that we need to ask our stakeholders. So tonight, I want to take you through what we're going to be working on in those three committees. I've also opened up the question or the chat feature from the GoToMeeting. So please feel free to put some questions in there, or if you have some thoughts, and we will answer those at the end of our presentation today. And then once we've done this work today, you're going to be receiving another email from the chair of the committee that you selected to be on. Those meetings will be very similar to what your students might have experienced. We're going to be using GoToMeeting, and those will be very interactive, and they'll be smaller than what you're experiencing right now. Obviously, we have a lot of people on this call with over 100 people volunteering, and then our chairs and our admin team that are leading these work groups. So we wanted to make sure that you all had kind of a brief introduction to the work. And I'm also recording this for those people that didn't make it, so they also have an overview of what we're going to be doing in the next 2 months. So we're going to be using a website and a resource called the Roadmap to Recovery. It's from an organization called Opportunity Labs. This work group, Opportunity Labs, is working with the Michigan Department of Education. They're also supporting our Macomb ISD, and they've been providing us with a lot of resources and information on the pandemic, and just really supporting educators as they navigate through the work with bringing students back into the school and navigating the pandemic as a whole. So they've been a great partner and a great resource. So the Roadmap to Recovery is all about where public education and public health come together. We know that there is a lot of work to be done in the three committees that we put together, and that's mental health, physical health, and academics. So those three committees are going to really drive how we build out the next 12 to 18 months here in Fraser. And I want to talk about that today. So what you're going to see is that we've put together what we're calling stakeholder teams. And with those stakeholder teams, we have various co-chairs and chairs for those committees. And I just want to take you through who those people are and who the people are you're going to be working with. The first chair is Kristen Ledford. She is on the communications group, and that really is the person that's coordinating all the communications that are associated with the Roadmap to Recovery. So she'll be the person you have been getting emails from and many communications from, and she guides a lot of the conversations that we're having, and she'll be facilitating and recording a lot of these meetings. And her role is crucial throughout our district because she's the point person when it comes to getting messages out to our parents, community, staff, etc. The three big committees that the people that we all signed up for are the Mental Health Committee, Physical Health, and Academic Committee. So the chair of our mental health team is our Director of Special Education, Jane Sturgill, and she will be supported by her co-chairs, which will be Houston Julian from Richards Middle School. He's the principal. Kyle Ray, who's an assistant principal at the high school, and then Christy Wiegand, who's a principal over at Edison, and Sam Argieri, who's a principal at Emerson, along with Katie Fitzpatrick, who is one of our instructional consultants. So that group of chairs and co-chairs will be the admin team that you will be working with, and you'll be receiving emails from Jane Sturgill. So when you receive a meeting invite from Ms. Sturgill, if that is the committee you signed up for, she will be the person that you'll be communicating with. Our second committee is physical health, and the last time we did this work, Dan Waters was in charge of our really operations and maintenance and return to school committee with all of the PPE requirements that we needed to manage as we came back this fall. Dan Waters is our Director of Operations, Maintenance, and Transportation. He will be the chair of this committee. And again, you're going to see that we have some co-chairs, and you're going to see that they are from all levels of the district. We are going to have on this committee Mr. Sines, who is the Fraser High School principal, Brent Brazier, who's the Director of Career and Technical Education, Christy Skledanowski, who is the elementary principal over at Salk. We have Chris Robinson, who is the assistant principal at Richards Middle School. And then we have Aaron Sutherland, who is our principal over at Disney Elementary. And then Kathy Maroney, who is at the Dooley Center. She's the director of our early childhood program. We also have some central office support. That would be Carrie Turman, who is our human resource director, Andrea Grusa, who is in charge of the business office, Shane Redshaw, who is our athletic director, and Allison Sear, who is our director of food service. In addition, Charlene Barla, who has been really coordinating a lot of our COVID efforts and working closely with the health department, will also be on this committee. The last committee is our academic group, and that will be chaired by Dr. Donna Anderson. She is our assistant superintendent for instruction. We also have Troy Linder, who is our chief technology officer. And again, on this committee, we have Amy Yeager, who is our assistant principal over at Fraser High School. Brent will also, our CT director, will be on this committee as well. We have Laura Woods, who is the elementary principal over at Mark Twain, Helena Fisher, who is our new assistant principal over at the high school, and then Keith Ton, who is an elementary principal at Eisenhower Elementary. Bridget Morawski is our special ed supervisor. She will also be joining the academic committee along with Kim Keith, who is one of our instructional consultants. So we are working really hard to make sure we have a balance of administrators and the various levels on each one of these committees. So we were really intentional about doing that. So what's going to happen is when your committee meets, you're going to have this group that you'll be working with. Some of these committees will even be broken down into smaller groups. So you may be put on or you may volunteer, I guess is the best way of putting it. If you're interested in a certain aspect of the work, perhaps with academics, with regard to like the virtual school. We've done a lot with that. And last year when we put together our virtual handbooks, we started to kind of break up into some subcommittees to do some of this work. So you may be on a committee with 30 people to begin with, but in the end, you may be working with maybe 5 or 10 people on a smaller portion of this work. And again, that will come out of your committee meetings that we're going to be starting after spring break. So I want to take a few minutes just to make sure everybody understands how a stakeholder plan like this works. We really try to follow a template and make sure that we have some key elements as we develop these committees. So it was really important for me that we created committees that were reflective of our geographic, cultural, racial, and socioeconomic diversity of the state, but of our community. So we want to make sure we have parent, teacher, student representatives, even people from perhaps outside of the school district as needed, from our police and fire department or some other community-based organizations. So far we've partnered with the Gleaners to provide additional food service support. We work closely with the Fraser Police and Fire to make sure, we are following the proper protocols for some of the PPE work we've needed to do. So making sure we have a really robust representation from our community is really important when it comes to governance. So when we look at this part of the plan, we were very intentional about making sure we reached out to all of our stakeholders. The communication side of things is very important. We need to have a designated staff member who will have single point accountability over external recovery and renewal communications. And we have to have a point person that will help us with any surveys that come out of our different committee work. So again, that will be Kristen Ledford. She is our point person for communication. And when we start to talk about surveys or information that we need to develop, we're going to make sure we work together and through a process where we have surveys that represent the needs of each committee. But it will all be then filtered through communications, so we have consistency, the questions worded appropriately. All of that will come out of communication. So maybe when you're in your mental health committee work, there may be some need to do some surveying. There may be some surveying we need to do from the academic committee as well. All of that will come through communications, and we'll put one survey out to our families and students and staff rather than trying to do 4 different little surveys. We're going to be really intentional about that. So that's that area of communication. We also have then the big 3 groups. So that's what I want to make sure everyone understands the work that's going to be done on these committees. So with the mental health group, that if you signed up for that group, there are 4 areas that you're really going to be looking at with this group here. And that is mental health screening, prevention and intervention, supporting teachers, and then the trauma-informed practices. And as you develop the different pieces of that committee, the communications, again, you'll work on that part, but again, it will kind of come out of our communications department, how we share that information. So if you remember in the email that I sent, there was the roadmap to recovery that had a link, and inside that link, there was a specific tab to mental health. So what you'll see is the actual work that you'll be doing in this committee. So some of the things that we're going to be looking to put together with mental health would be, how do we screen our students for mental health? How do we support them? How do we provide the appropriate response to the data when we get that back? How do we communicate with families and guardians how these screeners will be used? So you're going to see that screening is important. We've always screened our students here in Fraser for academics, and the past couple of years, we've really been looking at that social and emotional side of things. And again, we want to make sure we have a plan to communicate this information out to our families. The other area is prevention and intervention. We're going to talk about our intervention resources that we have. We're going to make sure everyone is trained appropriately and make sure that, we have the appropriate mental health response that we need. One thing we've seen with COVID is there is a lot of stress that's been associated with COVID and COVID fatigue, anxiety. Lots of those concerns have been surfacing as we've returned to school, and this committee will definitely be looking to support that. Another area, and that's why our teachers are so important to this conversation, is how are we going to be able to support our own teachers with their mental health needs. And then the last part of this committee work will be our trauma-informed practices. And we've already done a lot with our trauma-informed practices, and we'll continue to work on that. So that mental health team led by Mrs. Sturgill will be looking at these areas and coming up with strategies to address those concerns. This next committee is physical health. And this is really a continuation of the work we did with our Return to Learn committee with school safety. Their focus area will be on the protocols, and again, we have a lot of this in place already, our COVID contact tracing, the need for vaccination, our PP and mitigation strategies, making sure we have data collection procedures in place, and then re-entry strategies. And that's really important right now, because as the Department of Health continues to make adjustments to the regulations about gatherings, this group will really be looking at those needs very carefully and help with planning. So again, you can see and take a look at some of the things that that group will be focusing in on. And I encourage you, if you obviously volunteered for this group, to take a look at some of the areas you will be focusing in on. This particular group, again, will be led by Dan Waters. And as you start to meet and talk about these different focus areas with the administration, you're going to see we have strategies in place. We need to not only think about what we have in place, but how we can build upon that and how that may change as we come back for summer school and other programs next fall. Then the last committee is our academic group. And this again is the continuation of the work from our return to school committee that we put together. Their focus areas will be on instruction. And there's two specific areas of instruction they're really going to look at. Our multi-tiered system of support. Last time we did this, we really worked hard before the fall began to make sure we had a good system in place for screening all of our students. The whole idea of, you probably have heard about academic loss, or how are we going to recover, gaps in learning. All of that will be a focus of the instructional committee. In addition, we'll also be talking about our virtual learning and what does our virtual learning look like for next year. Then we have our professional learning for staff. We also want to make sure we think about our technology, our family engagement, and then how are we supporting students with their post-secondary work. So again, if you click on the link to academics, you'll see those topics and some of the work that you'll be doing with that group. So those committees will be actually coming back with a report and recommendations for us to move forward with. And just so you have some idea of what that looks like, if you take a look at how we did this last time, you're going to see that we had our return to school, and we actually had a mental health committee. And again, this is the continuation of that work. And you'll see that they came up with some essential actions and documents that they put together. And we actually published those and we used them as we started the school year. So with our mental health committee at the beginning of last year, we came up with a lot of great strategies. We put together support structures for students when they came back to school. We provided school level outreach for at-risk students. We provided check-in, check-out services for students at some of the buildings. So this example is one of the ways we're able to demonstrate and really make visible the work for our stakeholders to see. So you're not just going to be on a committee, you're going to be on a committee that actually comes out with some strategies and recommendations for us to move forward for next fall, and even with our summer school and some of our end of the year activities. So know that this work is really important as we plan for, like I said, the next 12 to 18 months. So I know I've talked a lot, and I want to take your questions. And again, today was kind of that big picture overview. If we were able to meet in person, we probably would have met, either in our LGI room or in the media center, and we would have been able to have, I think, a little bit more of a conversation. But again, I would have taken some time to explain to you those different committees. So what I need you to do for our next meeting, and want you to know what those next steps are, is take a moment, or 5-10 minutes, and just kind of look over the content of the committee that you selected to be on. So go back to that Roadmap to Recovery website and take a look at that. Kristen will also be posting this video along with this link. And then the other piece is you might want to check out that Fraser Forward page, because that has the examples of the work that we did last, I want to say, summer. And it gives you a good idea of the types of activities and products that we put together. You'll see in that example, all of our signage that you probably see around the building with regards to COVID, that all came out of that committee work. So it's a really good example that you can check out to kind of get a better sense of what you're going to be thinking about and working on. The next thing you can expect is an email from your committee chair of when your meetings are going to be after spring break. We know that spring break is around the corner. We have 1 day this week and 4 days next week, so we don't want to try to schedule anything right now. Our co-chairs are working on kind of organizing things and planning out their meetings. And then what you can expect are at least 2 to 3 go-to meetings, and if possible, if you're working in a smaller group of 5 to 10 people, a meeting even on site. And those will take place in April and the beginning of May. But our goal is to have a plan very similar to what we put together for the beginning of the school year in 2020, ready by the end of the school year of 2021. So that first meeting will be after spring break, and you'll also get that information from the chairs of that committee. So again, I will have Kristen, when we're done today, post this PowerPoint along with the 2 websites that you're going to want to review on our Fraser Forward page. So there will be actually a new tab under our Fraser Forward page that will be called the Roadmap to Recovery, and that information will be there for you. So again, it will be pretty straightforward what you need to check out. Also, if you happen to have forgotten what committee you signed up for, if you want to change, you can let me know that as well, and you can send me an email, and we can make sure everybody knows where they're supposed to be. There's a lot going on, and I can understand why you might not always remember that. So I'm going to pause, and I'm going to go back to my screen, I believe, so you can all see us again. And I will stop showing my screen. And hopefully you can now see the 3 of us. And I did pretty good, 457. So we're doing pretty well. So we're ready for questions. I know Kristen was monitoring the chat. There are no questions. There's no questions?
None.
No comments? Are you sure you turned it on?
It says on. Yes, they can ask questions.
This is going to be a great group to work with. That's awesome. They must have done their research.
Somebody saying hi, so we know that it's working. I appreciate that. All right, well, great. Well, we are very thankful for all of you to take the time to be on this call today, just to be a part of this work. It is very important, and I can't stress to you enough the importance of hearing your voice. That's very important to, like I said, the cabinet, the leadership here in Fraser, the Board of Education. We do want to hear your voice. I know these are challenging times, and we're not going to make everyone happy, but we will listen and we'll do our best, to always keep students first. And I know these are some really challenging times. This hasn't been easy for any of us, and I am sure, like many of you, can't wait till we're able to do more of these types of things in person and have more conversation and be able to collaborate in an easier way than this. All right, Dr. Anderson, anything else?
No, I look forward to working with the academic team. We've got lots to cover, and it's good work. It's going to be good work. Looking forward to it.
All right, Kristen, you know what you're going to be posting. We'll have that up by tomorrow. Again, thanks for being here, and I'm going to shut things down at 4:58, and have a great spring break and be safe. Thank you.